I'm a 25-year-old woman, and for as long as I can remember, my dad has treated my younger sister, Emma 23F, like she was made of gold while I was an afterthought. If there was something nice to be given, it went to Emma. If something needed to be sacrificed, that was my role. It wasn't even subtle. Birthdays, holidays, regular days, it was always the same pattern. Emma got new clothes, the latest phone, expensive trips. I got hand-me-downs and lectures about working hard for what I want. It wasn't just favoritism. It was blatant, in your face, I don't even care how this looks kind of treatment. The worst was when we were in college. 2 years ago, Emma turned 21, and our dad surprised her with a brand new car. Not just any car either. A fully loaded, shiny new sedan. She screamed, hugged him, and posted about it nonstop. Meanwhile, I had been working 2 part-time jobs, saving up every penny, because when I asked about help getting a car, my dad just laughed and told me to figure it out. I did. I figured it out by taking buses, walking in the rain, and occasionally getting rides from classmates. All while Emma flaunted her car, never once offering me a ride, even when she knew I was struggling. Every time I pointed out the unfairness, my dad brushed it off. You're older. You should be independent by now. Or worse, a real woman doesn't complain. She hustles. But Emma? She wasn't expected to hustle. She got everything handed to her, no questions asked. I worked 2 jobs and finally bought myself a reliable used car. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Paid for with my own money. No handouts. No daddy's wallet. I covered my own insurance, gas, and repairs. Meanwhile, Emma treated her brand new car like trash. Speeding tickets, ignored oil changes, parking in places she shouldn't. But instead of dealing with consequences, she ran to our dad, who always bailed her out. He paid the tickets. He covered the repairs. He made excuses for her. Over time, I pulled away from both of them. I stopped answering texts unless absolutely necessary. I stopped attending family gatherings where I had to sit and watch my dad fawn over Emma while I was treated like a guest in my own family. I focused on myself, my career, and my own success. Then last month, karma finally hit. Emma wrecked her car. She wasn't hurt, but the car was totaled. It was her fault, speeding, not paying attention, and she ran a red light. Dad tried to fix it like he always did, but this time he couldn't. Money was tight. I had already noticed little signs before. His car wasn't as well maintained, he had been avoiding taking Emma on expensive trips, and once I overheard him arguing about a late bill on the phone. Turns out, all that reckless spending finally caught up to him. He was in debt, barely keeping up with bills, and definitely couldn't afford another car for Emma. That's when I got the call. Out of nowhere, my dad reached out after months of silence. He didn't ask how I was doing. He didn't check in. He just went straight to it. Emma needed a ride. Since she didn't have a car, I should be a good sister and drive her where she needed to go. Oh, and while I was at it, he could also use a lift now, and then since his financial issues meant he wasn't keeping his car for much longer. I laughed. Literally laughed out loud. I reminded him of what he told me when I needed help. Figure it out. Silence. Then came the excuses. It's different. You have a good job now. You can help. Family should support each other. I wasn't buying it. I told him I was too busy and hung up. No apologies. No guilt. Just a clear understanding that I owed them nothing. That's when the outrage started. I got furious texts calling me ungrateful and petty. My dad couldn't believe how selfish I was. Emma, of course, jumped in, playing the victim, acting like I was the worst sister in the world for abandoning her. But here's the thing. I never abandoned them. They pushed me away for years. Now that they needed something, they suddenly remembered I existed. For once, I wasn't the one left struggling. I wasn't the one without a car. I wasn't the one begging for help. And it felt amazing. The fallout didn't take long. Within a day of telling my dad and Emma to figure it out, my phone started blowing up. Messages from aunts, uncles, and cousins I barely spoke to. All variations of the same thing, be the bigger person. She's your sister, family helps family. Some tried guilt, saying my dad was doing his best, and that I should be more understanding. Others went straight to shaming, calling me selfish and cold-hearted. It was almost funny. None of these people cared when I was walking to work in the rain, but suddenly Emma not having a car was a family crisis. Then my mom called. She and my dad divorced years ago, and she had always tried to support me the best she could. I expected her to tell me to smooth things over, but instead, she laughed. She had seen this coming for years. She told me she was proud of me for standing up for myself, that my dad had always babied Emma and was now facing the consequences of his own choices. She didn't tell me what to do, just that she knew whatever decision I made, I'd be fine. Emma wasn't taking silence as an answer. She sent text after text, going from passive-aggressive to full meltdown. First, it was just a ride. Then, it was my responsibility as her sister. Then, I was an asshole for ignoring her. Dad wasn't any better. At first, he was furious, accusing me of turning my back on my own family. When yelling didn't work, he switched tactics. He wasn't mad, just disappointed. He didn't realize I could be so heartless. He thought I was raised better. I ignored them both. I wasn't a taxi. They could figure it out like I had to. A few days later, Dad called again, this time with a different tone. He understood now. Maybe he could have handled things differently. Maybe he hadn't always been fair. But that was in the past. What mattered now was moving forward and supporting each other. I let him talk. Then I asked him outright, was this an apology, or was he just trying to get what he wanted? Silence. Then the excuses. He didn't want to argue. He just wanted his daughters to stick together. I hung up. Emma wasn't done though. She turned to social media. A vague, teary post about how some people turn their backs on family when it's inconvenient. Comments flooded in, offering sympathy. People asked what happened. She played it up, making it sound like I had abandoned her completely. Then mutual friends started messaging me. Some told me to just give her a ride. Others told me Emma was exaggerating, but still, wasn't I being a little harsh? I ignored all of it. Then I found out my dad had been trying another route. He went to a family member, one of our uncles, and asked for money to get Emma a used car. He was turned down. The uncle had his own family to support and wasn't about to throw money at Emma's recklessness. Then Emma started complaining that her job was at risk. Her boss had already written her up twice for being late, and she was on her final warning. She had already switched departments once to avoid being fired, but now, if she lost her job, it would somehow be my fault. It was ironic. She had a car for years and never once thought about helping me when I struggled. But now that the roles were reversed, it was suddenly an emergency. Then I heard through another relative that my dad's financial problems were worse than I realized. He was months behind on bills. Debt collectors were calling. He was struggling to keep up with rent. That's when the final ultimatum came. A long, dramatic message from my dad. Help them, or I was out of the family. No more calls, no more visits. I had to decide if I wanted to be part of this family or if I was turning my back on them forever. I read it twice. Then I laughed. I was never really part of this family. Not in the way Emma was. My dad made that clear years ago. I blocked them both. Phone, social media, everything. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely free. Blocking my dad and Emma wasn't the end of it. Not even close. If anything, it only made them escalate. The first sign of trouble was when I got removed from the family group chat. No warning, no explanation. 1 second, I could see the messages, and the next I was locked out. Then a cousin sent me screenshots. The chat had turned into a full-on smear campaign. My dad was ranting about how I had turned my back on family and how he never thought I'd be so cold. Emma piled on, calling me heartless and cruel. Some relatives jumped in, agreeing that I should help because family is family. Others, though, pushed back, pointing out how I had been treated for years. The group split into two sides. Some backed me saying I was right to walk away. Others acted like I had committed some kind of betrayal. A few tried to stay neutral, saying it was a misunderstanding and that we just needed to talk it out. Then my dad messaged me from a new number. A long, fake apology. He understood that he had made mistakes and he just wanted to move forward. No mention of the group chat, no acknowledgement of what he had done. Just a vague, manipulative attempt to act like he had changed. I blocked the number. Emma went the social media route again. This time, she tagged me directly. A dramatic post about how sometimes the people you trust the most will abandon you when you need them the most. The comments were filled with sympathy, people telling her to stay strong, and that she deserved better. Then my friends saw it, and they weren't having it. One by one, they started commenting with receipts, calling out Emma's lies. Some brought up how she never offered me rides when I needed them. Others straight up asked why she expected me to help now when she had ignored me for years. Emma doubled down at first, arguing with anyone who called her out. She posted long, defensive comments about how she was just telling the truth and how she couldn't believe how cruel people could be. But as more and more people called her out, and mutual friends started unfollowing her, she eventually gave up. By the next day, the post had quietly disappeared. But the real escalation happened at work. A coworker pulled me aside, saying someone had called the office, asking about me. Said it was a concerned family member. When they asked for a name, the caller hung up. The next day, my boss called me into his office. Turns out my dad had called pretending to be worried about me. He told my boss I was going through a rough time and hinted that I might be unstable, probably hoping to stir up trouble, maybe even get me written up. My boss thankfully saw right through it. This wasn't the first time my dad had tried to meddle earlier. A coworker mentioned getting weird calls asking for me, and now HR had flagged my file after he claimed to be a former mentor checking in. My boss thought the whole thing was ridiculous. He even joked about adding my dad to a block list. Then Emma messaged me again. A long, rambling text about how she had learned her lesson and just needed a little help. Not even a free car, just a small loan. Enough to buy something used. She swore she'd pay me back. I didn't even entertain it. I just told her she should have saved her money instead of expecting handouts. More silence. Then, through another cousin, I heard that my dad had started selling things to cover bills. Furniture, electronics, anything that had value. Emma, now completely stuck, moved back home. No car, no independence. Just a 23-year-old still being taken care of by the same parent who had spent years making excuses for her. The final blow came when my dad took the pity party to Facebook. A long, dramatic post about how sometimes the people you raise and love turn their backs on you. No names, but it was obvious. Comments flooded in. More sympathy. More people telling him to stay strong. I scrolled past it and moved on. No anger, no guilt, nothing. Because at the end of the day, this was karma doing its job. I had spent years walking in the rain while Emma sped past me in a new car, and now she was the one stranded. I thought things had finally died down. My dad and Emma had been blocked, the Facebook pity party had run its course, and I was back to focusing on my own life. Then, I ran into them at the grocery store. I was grabbing a few things when I turned a corner and almost bumped into my dad. Emma was right next to him, holding a half-empty basket. She saw me first, her face twisting like she'd just bitten into something sour. My dad, on the other hand, immediately switched into performance mode. He plastered on a fake smile and acted like nothing had happened. A casual, "Oh hey, how have you been?" Like we hadn't just gone through weeks of drama. Like he hadn't tried to manipulate, guilt trip, and drag my name through the mud. Emma, still glaring, let out a sarcastic snicker, loud enough for me to hear. Then, without missing a beat, she muttered, "Must be nice having a car, huh?" I shrugged. "It is. You should try saving up for one." Her jaw clenched. My dad, sensing things weren't going the way he wanted, decided to make a scene. Right there, in the middle of the store, he raised his voice. Not yelling, but just loud enough that people nearby started glancing over. "Can't you just help your family? We're struggling, and I know you have the means to do something about it. I raised you better than this." A few shoppers slowed their carts, pretending to browse while clearly eavesdropping. I stayed calm. I walked for years. You told me to figure it out. So, figure it out. Emma let out a dramatic gasp, like I had just personally insulted her entire existence. Then, she exploded. The words flew out fast, something about how I was selfish, how I had no heart, how she couldn't believe I would watch my own sister suffer. Then, in true Emma fashion, she stormed off, leaving my dad standing there, looking lost. A woman nearby, probably in her 50s, turned to me and smiled. "Good for you," she said under her breath. "Don't let them guilt you." My dad must have realized the pity act wasn't working, because he mumbled something under his breath and hurried after Emma. By the time I finished shopping and got home, Emma had already taken the drama online. A passive-aggressive post about how sad it is when your own blood turns their back on you. More sympathy comments. More people telling her to stay strong. Mutual friends started messaging me, asking what happened. And I ignored them. Then, late that night, a message popped up from an unknown number. It was my dad. A long paragraph about how he had no choice but to reach out because things were getting desperate. He needed my help co-signing a loan to get Emma a used car. Not even buying it, just co-signing. I blocked the number without responding. They were never going to change. I thought blocking my dad and Emma would finally put an end to their nonsense. I was wrong. A few days after the grocery store incident, a coworker pulled me aside at work. Someone had been calling the office, repeatedly asking for me. No name, just a concerned family member wanting to check if I was doing okay. That set off alarm bells immediately. I hadn't told anyone in my family where I worked, so whoever was calling had to be digging. Then my boss called me into his office. Apparently, someone had called HR, claiming to be a former mentor and expressing concern about my well-being. He had been vague, dropping hints that I was struggling emotionally and might not be fit for work. Thankfully, my boss and HR saw through it. They recognized manipulation when they heard it. My boss saw right through it. He knew my work ethic and had no reason to take it seriously. He reassured me that HR had already flagged my file to ignore any future calls from my dad. If he tried again, security would handle it. I thought that was the end of it. Then Emma tried her luck. A few days later, another call came in. This time, it was my so-called worried sister asking if I was under a lot of stress lately and if my job could go easy on me. A coworker answered that call, and instead of playing along, they hit Emma with pure sarcasm. "Oh, Op is doing great. She's been loving life, enjoying her car, and thriving. Should I take a message?" Emma hung up immediately. Minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from her. A furious rant about how humiliating it was to be mocked by my own coworkers. How I was turning everyone against her and making things worse. I didn't respond. Then my dad switched tactics. Since direct contact wasn't working, he dragged in another family member, our uncle. I got a call from my uncle, who rarely ever reached out. He sounded hesitant, saying he had heard that I was being really harsh toward my dad and Emma. That family should stick together. That whatever had happened, we should move past it. I asked him exactly what my dad had told him. Turns out my dad had painted a completely different story. In his version, he had done his best to be a good father, and I had randomly cut him off and refused to help during tough times. Emma was struggling because of my cold-heartedness. He made it sound like I had turned my back on them for no reason. So I laid it all out. The years of favoritism. How I had to work 2 jobs while Emma got everything handed to her. How my dad had laughed in my face when I asked for help but expected me to step up now that Emma had lost her car. The constant manipulation. The workplace calls. The social media pity party. Silence. Then my uncle sighed. He hadn't known any of that. He had only heard my dad's side. A few days later, I heard through a cousin that my uncle had actually called out my dad for how he had treated me. He wasn't taking his side anymore. That was a small victory. Meanwhile, Emma's problems were getting worse. Since she had no car, she had been relying on Uber and coworkers for rides. But she was still showing up late too often, and her boss had apparently given her a final warning. If she didn't fix it, she'd lose her job. Then another piece of news: my dad was months behind on rent. The financial issues he had always ignored were catching up to him. And that's when he made his final move. A long voicemail. Over 5 minutes long. He was done being angry. Now, he was hurt. He wanted to fix things. He wanted to move forward. He just wanted us to forgive each other. I deleted it without listening past the first few seconds. Because, at this point, I already knew exactly how this would go. And I wasn't falling for it again. I thought I had finally put the past behind me. My dad was blocked. Emma was spiraling. And I had no reason to look back. But then, out of nowhere, an unexpected call changed everything. It was from an estranged aunt, my dad's older sister. She had been distant from the family for years, never really involved in the drama. But she told me she had been following what had been happening, and that there was something I needed to know. Something about Emma. She didn't sugarcoat it. Emma wasn't my dad's daughter. She was the product of an affair. My dad had cheated on my mom, and Emma was the result. My mom found out when Emma was still a baby. The reason she divorced my dad wasn't just because of his favoritism. It was because she knew the truth and decided to walk away quietly rather than let the whole thing blow up and ruin my childhood. But my dad? He couldn't walk away. He had spent years overcompensating, spoiling Emma rotten to make sure she stayed close to him. She wasn't just his favorite. She was his guilt personified. Everything suddenly made sense. The endless gifts. The excuses. The way he never let her face consequences but always expected me to struggle. He had been trying to buy Emma's love to make sure she didn't one day leave him the way my mom had. And in doing so, he had thrown me aside like I didn't even matter. I called my mom right after. She didn't deny any of it. She had kept it quiet because she didn't want to drag me through the mess when I was a child. She figured that eventually I'd see the truth on my own. And she wasn't wrong. She also told me something else. She had never hated Emma. She had never blamed her. But she had always known that Emma was growing up to be entitled, because my dad never let her fail. She had seen it coming, but it wasn't her place to step in. I sat with that information for a while. My dad had never chosen me. Not once. And Emma had never needed to work for anything because she had always been Daddy's special girl. It didn't change anything, but it explained everything. And just as I was processing all of this, Emma reached out again. A simple text. "We need to talk." I ignored it at first, but she was persistent. Messages kept coming. This wasn't like before. She wasn't raging or guilt-tripping. She was asking to talk. So, out of curiosity, I finally responded. At first, she was unusually polite, almost friendly, bringing up old memories as if we were close again. But the moment I asked why she was really reaching out, her tone shifted. She didn't want to fix things. She wanted something. Her boss had finally had enough of her constant lateness. She had one last chance, get reliable transportation or lose her job. That's why she suddenly understood. That's why she wanted to make things right. She thought she could manipulate me the way she had manipulated my dad her entire life. I asked her outright, if she had a car, would she even be talking to me right now? Silence. Then, instant rage. The real Emma came out fast. I was an arrogant asshole for thinking I was better than her. She called me selfish, pathetic, said I was making life harder for no reason. I didn't respond. I blocked her for good, and this time I felt nothing. I had finally cut my father and Emma out of my life for good. No contact, no guilt, no regrets. I figured that was the end of it. But then a letter arrived that changed everything. It was from a lawyer's office, addressed directly to me. At first I thought it was some scam, but when I opened it, I saw something I never expected. I had been left an inheritance. I remembered an old family friend, someone who had always admired how I worked hard despite everything. I hadn't spoken to them in years, but they always told me they respected my independence. Now, it seemed they had left me a parting gift. Apparently a distant relative, someone I barely even remembered, had passed away and left a significant sum in my name. Not a fortune, but enough to make a real difference. The letter explained that this person had been an old family friend. They had seen how hard I worked, how I built my life on my own, and they admired my independence. They wanted the money to go to someone who had actually earned it. It didn't seem real at first, but then I met with the lawyer, and the reality sank in. The money was legally mine, no strings attached. And of course it didn't take long for my father and Emma to find out. The first message came from my dad, out of nowhere. After months of silence, he sent a sickeningly cheerful message. He had heard the good news and wanted to talk. Then Emma reached out. Suddenly she was proud of me. She wanted to start fresh and rebuild our bond. I ignored them both. But they weren't done. My dad called, something he hadn't done since his last guilt trip voicemail. This time, his tone was completely different. The desperation was thick. He said he was about to lose everything. Bills were stacking up. He had nowhere to turn. He needed my help. I reminded him of what he had always told me. Figure it out. He went silent. Then he hung up. Not even an hour later, Emma took it online. Another dramatic post about how family should stick together, about how money changes people, about how she was so happy for me, but so sad that I had turned my back on my own blood. I didn't have to do anything. My uncle stepped in, publicly. He called Emma out for the years of favoritism, the manipulation, the entitlement. He didn't just shut her down, he exposed everything. Emma deleted her post within minutes. But my dad wasn't done. One last voicemail, sobbing, saying he had nowhere to go, that he had lost everything, that he just wanted his daughter back. I deleted it without listening past the first few seconds. Then, I made my final decision. I was going to donate part of the inheritance, but only to charity. When Emma found out, she completely lost it. A full-on meltdown. Another vague post, this time not so subtly calling me a monster for giving money away while my own family suffered. I blocked her, permanently. And for the first time, I felt completely, truly free. It didn't take long for my father's entire world to collapse. I heard through a relative that he had finally been evicted. Months of unpaid rent had caught up to him, and his landlord had had enough. With no savings and nowhere to turn, he had started couch surfing, bouncing between distant relatives who would let him stay for a few nights before sending him on his way. Emma wasn't doing any better. Without reliable transportation, she had lost her job. She had been pushing her luck for too long, showing up late and making excuses. Eventually, her boss got tired of it and let her go. She moved in with a friend, but that didn't last long either. Apparently, Emma was just as entitled there as she had been at home. She didn't pay rent on time, expected her roommate to drive her everywhere, and treated the place like her personal hotel. The friendship didn't survive, and she was forced to find somewhere else to stay. Then came the last attempt. A letter arrived in my mailbox. No return address, but I recognized my father's handwriting immediately. It was long, full of sob stories and empty apologies. He admitted that he had made mistakes but insisted that families should support each other. He just needed a little help to get back on his feet. Not even a lot, just enough to start over. I read the entire letter, then I set it aside and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just indifference. I didn't respond. Instead, I focused on my own life. I moved into a better apartment, upgraded my car, and kept thriving. I started traveling, experiencing life on my own terms. For the first time, I was truly free. Emma made one last desperate attempt, but not directly to me. She tried guilt-tripping my mom. It didn't work. My mom shut her down immediately, telling her that she had reaped what she had sown, that she had every opportunity to change but chose to stay entitled, that I owed her nothing. Then, the final piece of karma hit. My father's reputation, the one he had built on lies and manipulation, was destroyed. People started seeing him for what he really was. The relatives who once defended him stopped responding to his pleas for help. The friends who once believed his sob stories cut him off. He had burned too many bridges, and now there was no one left to take him in. Then, I made my final decision. I wrote one last letter. I was always told to figure it out. So, figure it out. I mailed it to the address where he had last been staying, and for the first time ever, I heard nothing back. No angry calls, no guilt-tripping messages, just silence. Emma, on the other hand, kept cycling through one dead-end job after another. She never changed. She always blamed others. Always expected life to hand her something for free. And me? I never looked back. Years later, I heard that my father tried to reconnect. He sent messages through distant relatives, asking if I would finally let the past go. I ignored them all. As for Emma, I have no idea where she is now. And the best part? I don't care. I finally escaped, and it feels incredible.